Welcome to this introduction to IELTS, brought to you by Learning English 365. My name's Donna, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be giving you all the key bits of information you need if you're thinking about taking the IELTS test, or whether you've already decided to take it and you're just beginning your preparation. Let's get started. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what the test is, how it's scored, and how it will help you in your move to an English-speaking country, whatever reason you've got for moving there, whether it's work, whether it's study, or whether it's for family reasons. First things first then, what is the IELTS test? So you can see on the screen that IELTS stands for International English Language Test. And it's a product jointly owned by organisations from the UK and Australia. And it gives proof of your English language proficiency for those countries. During the test, each of your language skills will be assessed. Your listening, your reading, your writing, and your speaking skills. One of the myths about the IELTS is that there's a pass or fail. Often people will ask, what do I need to do to pass the IELTS? There is no pass or fail. Okay? Instead, each test taker is scored on a band from 1 to 9. 1 means that the test taker has very little command, if any, of the language and is deemed a non-user, up to 9, where the test taker is deemed to be an expert user with a full command of the English and akin to a native speaker, if you like. The test score that you will need does vary. It depends on the country you're moving to and also the reason why you're moving to that country. So it's always very important to speak to the organisation or the university or the business that you're joining to see what the requirements are in your circumstances for you. On the screen now, you've got a table showing the different band scores that you can achieve in the IELTS test. The skills level for each of those band scores, and a description of what those scores and levels mean. These are taken from IELTS documentation, and these are the most up-to-date definitions. So you can see you've got 0 at the bottom, and that means you just didn't take the test at all. Up to 9, that expert user. And in the middle, you've got 5 is a modest user. So the test taker has a partial command of the language and copes with overall meaning in most situations. And 6, a competent user, where the test taker has a full command of the language, despite some inaccuracies. So we repeat again, it's really important that you understand what level you're expected to achieve for your purposes, the reasons why you are migrating. So why do the IELTS then? Why do people choose to do it? Well, in essence, people do it because it's accepted as evidence of English language proficiency. If you're moving to an English-speaking country to study, work, or you're moving there maybe for family reasons or simple migration reasons. Let's look at each country in turn to see what their kind of requirements are. So first of all, we have Australia. And IELTS is accepted by the Department for Home Affairs in Australia for many of the visa categories. And it's also accepted if you are applying for permanent residency in Australia too. The minimum score that you need to achieve for immigration to Australia is a 6. So you need to be a competent user on the IELTS band score. Canada. It's likely if you're applying to work in Canada or applying for a residency visa that you will be asked for proof of your language proficiency, and the IELTS can give you that. It's always really important with Canada to contact the organisation you're dealing with so that you can find out exactly what it is that is required in your circumstances for the purposes that you're migrating, because it does vary in Canada. New Zealand. Immigration New Zealand asks for IELTS as evidence of English language proficiency for different types of visas. Again, this includes skilled migrants, entrepreneurs, family visas. The minimum score you will need for immigration to New Zealand is a 6.5. So you can already see how things differ from country to country. The United Kingdom. Evidence of English language ability is required in the UK for those applying to settle permanently. It's often referred to as leave to remain or long residence in the UK. And the minimum scores required do vary in the UK from a 4 up to a 7. So yes, again, please contact your organisation to find out what it is that they require from you. United States of America, it's slightly different to the others because traditionally it's not necessarily the IELTS would be someone's first choice if they were migrating to the US. However, now more than 3,400 American institutions do accept IELTS as proof of your language proficiency, and that is growing all the time. So again, it's very important that if you are thinking of migrating to the US and you're not sure which test you should take, please contact them and see whether they do accept the IELTS as evidence of your language skill, because increasingly more and more organisations in the States are accepting it. Okay, what are the test types? The different IELTS test types. There are 2. We've got the IELTS Academic and the IELTS General Training. As the name suggests, the IELTS Academic test is suitable for those wanting to study in an English-speaking environment at university or higher. Okay. Undergraduate or higher. You can also take the IELTS academic test if you are looking to prove your professional registration purposes. So maybe you have a professional qualification in your own country and you want it recognised in an English-speaking country. So in those circumstances, people may take the IELTS academic test. The IELTS general training is suitable for those applying to study below degree level, including in an English school or college, and for work experience or other employment training. It's also required for migration purposes to Australia, Canada, New Zealand and the UK, the general one. Generally speaking, if you want to study in an English-speaking country, then you would be looking to do the academic test. Okay? And if you're not, for work or general immigration purposes, then the general training test will probably suit your purposes. It's always recommended, though, as I've said, that you check what the requirements are for your organisation or workplace or business before you take the test. You know, the last thing you want is to take the test and realise actually you did the wrong one. Particularly important if you take the general test rather than the academic one, because the general test would not be accepted in an academic environment. Okay, the test format then. As I said at the beginning, the IELTS does test all of your language skills. So your ability to listen, to hear information, your ability to speak, reading and writing. All test takers, whether you do the academic or whether you do the general test, all test takers have the same listening and speaking test. But there are different tests for the reading and writing sections, depending on which test that you're doing. The listening, reading and writing sections of the IELTS are all done on the same day with little or no break in between. So you do them all together. And the speaking part of the test is generally done a week before or a week after, okay, the main test day. In total, the whole test process takes less than 3 hours, around 2 hours, 45 minutes. Okay, let's look at each section in a little bit more detail now. So the listening test, okay? So this is the same test, whether you're academic or general training, as I've said. Let's have a look at some key features of it. Well, it lasts approximately 30 minutes. And if you are doing a traditional written test, you will also get an extra 10 minutes to transfer your answers to your answer booklet. You'll listen to 4 recordings of native English speakers, and each section, each recording has 10 questions following it. So the first one, a conversation between 2 people set in an everyday social context. And an example is, a typical example is a customer calls a company to find out some specific information about a product or a service. The second section is a monologue set in again in an everyday social context. So, for example, a speaker just gives a short presentation on a service. Then the third one is a conversation between different people, usually up to 4 people. And this one will usually be set in an educational or training context. So for an example, a college tutor is talking about an assignment with their students, maybe. That kind of thing, or discussion as part of a tutorial. And then the last one is a monologue on an academic subject. So, for example, an extract from a lecture. Okay. It's important to recognise that there's a range of accents used in the recordings. Okay, so the people that you listen to could be from the UK, they could be from the US, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. Okay, so it's really important when you're preparing for your listening test that you try and listen to as many different accents as possible, as many as you can. Seek out the news channels in those different countries and really listen to what the people are saying. Do you understand them? There is always a slight difference in pronunciation and also in intonation. So get yourself used to hearing and understanding the different accents. These are your very important must remember points about the listening test. you will only hear the recording once. That is very, very important. There's no second chances when it comes to the listening. So you must listen carefully. Okay? You will have some time before you hear the track to read the questions. So you get a bit of an idea of what you're going to hear. And we'll have a look at an example in a minute so you can see what I mean. But yes, you will only hear it once. Very important. There's different types of question types. And there isn't just one type. Okay? So when you're practicing again, to have a look at different types of questions. So you might have a multiple choice questions. You might have matching in pieces of information. You might have to label something, or you might have to complete sentences or missing information from a table. And each question is worth 1 mark. So each question is equally weighted, but it's very important. You will be penalised for poor grammar and spelling. Okay. So yes, this is a listening test, but you are providing written answers. So your written work will also be assessed. Okay. So you really don't want to, really don't want to be penalised for poor spelling or poor grammar in your listening test. Let's have a look at a typical question now, so you can see. We're going to look at the question first, and then I will play the track for you so that you can actually hear for the information that we need to complete. So this is a typical kind of question from part 1 of the test. Okay, so this is a normal conversation between 2 people in a social context. So we always get time to have a look at the questions first. So let's have a real close look at the information and what we're going to be asked to provide, to fill in. So we can see here, we've got Packham's agency, and this is a customer quotation form. And as we look down the form, we can see that there's already some information given. So we can see country of destination, Kenya, that has been completed. And we have person's name, and we've got a town, and we've got a length with 1.5 meters has been provided for us. We can also see some numbers, 1 to 8 on the form. And those are the missing pieces of information that we are going to need to listen for and complete on our answer booklet. And already we can see what type of information we'll be listening out for. So number 1, for example, it's part of the name. So we have the person's first name. So already we know we'll be looking for their surname or their family name. Number 2, it's an address. So yes, we've got part of an address. So yes, we're looking for the first part of an address. So a number or a house name or a building name, something like that. And we also know, number 3, we're looking for a postcode. So we'll be listening out for that. And yes, we now have the container, the size, and we've got the length, but we're being asked to provide the width and the height. So we're looking for sizes. We'll be listening out for sizes there. And then 6 and 7 come under the contents. So we've already got clothes listed. So what other items is the person looking to put into the container? So we'll be listening out for that. And then number 8 is total estimated value. So we'll be looking for an amount of money that is quoted in the listening. So as you can see, we haven't listened to the track yet, but already we know the kinds of things we're going to hear, and we know what information we want to extract from the listening track. Before we listen, one more very important point I want to point out to you It says right at the top, write no more than 3 words and or a number for each answer. It's very, very important that you follow instructions like this. Often you will be given an instruction and it might be no more than 1 word, it might be no more than 2 words and or a number. It does vary according to the question types, but it's very important that you follow those instructions, because if you don't, and we decided to write more than 3 words and or a number, even if the information was correct, if we have not followed the instructions and written more than 3 words and or a number, then our answer will be marked wrong. Okay, so there's a lot to remember, isn't there? But it's very important you follow the instructions, read them carefully. And this goes throughout the test, okay? All aspects of the test. Read the question, read the instructions carefully. Okay, let's listen to the track now that goes with this form. And listen out for the answers. How many can you find?
You will hear a telephone conversation between a customer and an agent at a company which ships large boxes overseas.
Good morning. Packham's shipping agents. Can I help you?
Oh, yes. I'm ringing to make inquiries about sending a large box, a container, back home to Kenya from the UK.
Yes, of course. Would you like me to try and find some quotations for you?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I need a few details from you.
Fine.
Can I take your name?
It's Jacob Mkere.
Can you spell your surname, please?
Yes, it's Mkere.
Is that M for mother?
Yes.
Thank you. And you say that you will be sending the box to Kenya?
That's right.
And where would you like the box picked up from?
From college, if possible.
Yes, of course. I'll take down the address now.
It's Westall College.
Is that Westall?
Yes, college.
Westall College. And where's that?
It's Downlands Road in Bristol.
Oh, yes, I know it. And the postcode?
It's BS8 9PU.
Right. And I need to know the size.
Yes, I've measured it carefully and it's 1.5 metres long.
Right.
0.75 metres wide.
Okay.
And it's 0.5 metres high or deep.
Great. So I'll calculate the volume in a moment and get some quotes for that. But first, can you tell me, very generally, what will be in the box?
Yes, there's mostly clothes.
Okay.
And there's some books.
Okay, good. Anything else?
Yes, there's also some toys.
Okay, and what is the total value, do you think, of the contents?
Well, the main costs are the clothes and the books. They'll be about £1,500. But then the toys are about another 200. So I'd put down £1,700.
So there you go. Did you get all the information that was missing from the quotation form? 2 other points I just want to point out to you before we move on. You heard the information that you needed to complete the form, so the answers to the questions in order. Okay, so the first thing you heard was number 1, the person's name, and the second was their address, third was their postcode, and then the information about the container. So you weren't having to go up and down to find the right section. It wasn't, the information was given in the order that you needed it. Okay. And one other thing, there were 2 words in the listening that was spelt out for you. You said that You will be penalised if your spelling is inaccurate. But this goes doubly, okay, when the word is spelt for you, okay, because it's part of the test. So the words were spelt, it was the person's surname and also the name of their college. It was specifically spelt out for you. So the expectation is that you will be able to record the answer accurately, okay, because you can spell the word. Right then, so that's an example of the listening test. Now we're going to move on to look at the speaking test. Again, the speaking test is the test that is the same, whether you're doing the general training or the academic test. Let's have a look at some key features of it. So your speaking test will last between 11 and 14 minutes, so not that long really. And it has 3 parts to it. The first part, the examiner will ask you some general questions about yourself. Okay, so information that you know about where you live, your family, your job, your hobbies, you know, what you're studying, all of those general personal information things. And partly this is designed to help you settle down. Everyone recognises that these kind of oral tests, they're a little bit unnatural and they do make us nervous. Okay, so this is also to enable you to relax a little bit into it with some easy questions. And that part of the test will last about 4 to 5 minutes. During the second part of the test, you'll be given a card which asks you to talk about a particular topic. Okay, you'll have some time to prepare, maybe around a minute to prepare what to say on that topic. And then you'll be asked to speak for up to 2 minutes about that. And then after you've finished, the examiner will likely ask you 1 or 2 follow-up questions, some sort of basic questions based on what you've said. And then the third section is an expansion of section 2, really. You'll be asked more detailed questions about the topic. Okay, ask for more information about the topic. And that will last, again, about 4 to 5 minutes. So that's your listening test. It's very important, right? These are the important points for your listening test. What are the examiners looking for? Well, first of all, they're looking for fluency and coherence in how you speak. And this comes back to, do you speak in a logical sequence? Do your sentences make sense? Do your ideas flow one to the other? Okay. Do you use pronouns? Do you connect your sentences and ideas? Do you use a range of different types of language, different clause types, for example? Lexical resource, your vocabulary, okay, your range of vocabulary. Do you just keep repeating the same phrases, or do you say the same things in different ways? And this is not just about using big words or, difficult words. It's, are you also using those words appropriately? Okay. And do they fit in the context that you're speaking in? Grammatical range and accuracy, as you would expect. Okay, so are you speaking correctly? Are you using correct grammar? And are you using a range of grammar? Are you mixing up your tenses appropriately? Are you using simple sentences and complex sentences? Are you shifting between the two? Okay? You're showing off the grammar that you know, that you've learned. And pronunciation. Okay? So that's the way that you're saying the words. Are you saying them accurately? Now, one thing I would like to say that I don't want you to worry too much is that obviously there's a range of pronunciation within the English speaking world. Okay, particularly between the British and the American accents. We do say some words very differently, you know, like tomato and tomato, for example. Don't worry too much. You're not being asked to speak in a British way or an American way. Okay, so any accepted pronunciation of words is okay. So you're not being forced into down one little route. So they're the important things. They're the things that the examiner is looking for in the speaking test. So now we're going to have a look at one. This is a typical part one of the test. And we'll look at the questions, and then we'll listen to part of a test where the examiner asks these questions, so you can hear what the test taker said in response to them. So, like we said, the first part of the test is just general information about yourself. There's no trick questions. It is all the stuff that you know. Okay, it's your life. Okay, so nobody knows it better than you. So we've got here, let's talk about your hometown or village. And there are some questions underneath that the examiner will ask. And then the accommodation. So what kind of accommodation the person lives in, how long they've lived there, and what do you like about it. Okay, so very run-of-the-mill, very general questions. So have a think about how you would answer those. And let's listen to a test taker giving it a go.
Now, in this first part, I'd like to ask you some more questions about yourself.
Okay.
Let's talk about your hometown or village. What kind of place is it?
It's quite a small village, about 20 kilometers from Zurich. And it's very quiet, and we have only two little shops, because most of the people work in Zurich or are orientated to the city.
What's the most interesting part of this place, the village?
On the top of a hill we have a little castle, which is very old and quite well known in Switzerland.
What kind of jobs do people in the village do?
We have some farmers in the village, as well as people who work in Zurich as bankers or journalists, or there are also teachers and some doctors, some medicines.
Right. Would you say it's a good place to live?
Yes, although it is very quiet, people are friendly, and I would say it's a good place to live there, yes.
Let's move on to talk about accommodation. Tell me about the kind of accommodation you live in.
Right, so we heard the first part of this test and the answers to the questions. One of the things that I would like to point out here is the last question. Would you say it's a good place to live? And the why here is in brackets. The examiner didn't actually say why. He didn't actually ask the question why, because the test taker did say yes, but he didn't stop there, did he? He carried on. He gave a reason why he thought it was a good place to live. And that's really important in your speaking test. Okay, don't just answer yes or no. Always give more information. Always give a reason for your answer. Okay, either way. Right, let's move on now then to the third part of the IELTS test. Reading. Now, as I said at the beginning, the reading section is one where there's a different test, whether you're taking the general training test or the academic test. So let's start with the general training. There are some similarities between the two, but there are some obvious differences as well. Let's have a look. So it's 60 minutes long. Okay, so it's an hour in total. There are 3 sections which are designed to test a wide range of your reading skills. And there's a total of 40 questions across the 3 sections. Section 1 may contain 2 or 3 short texts or several shorter texts. And this may be a notice or an advertisement or a train timetable, a bus timetable, that kind of thing. Now that's what's meant by social survival there. Okay, so something you typically have to extract information from. Section 2 is workplace survival and has two different texts. And typically, you know, we're talking about the workplace, so you might have a job description, you might have contracts, you might have some staff training or development information to read and extract information from or answer questions about. And the third section is general reading, and that's usually one text, and it's extended prose. It's going to be more complex, and it could be something. It could be something from an article from a newspaper or a magazine, or it could be an extract from a book, either a novel or a non-fictional book. You get the idea. So still general, but so you can already see there's a range of different things that you'll be asked to read about. So what are the important things to remember about your reading test? Each question is worth 1 mark, so that each is equally weighted, but you will be penalised for poor spelling and grammar. Okay, common across. Yeah, this isn't the writing test, but you will be penalised if you spell things wrong or your grammar is inaccurate. And you'll face a variety of question types here, and you've got some examples on the screen there, from multiple choice to identifying information to completing sentences or summaries or tables, and answering questions, answering short answer questions. And as always, we're going to come back to this again and again, is read the question. Okay, because just like in the listening test, where it will tell you how many words or numbers to include in your answers, it will do the same here as well. So it's very important that you read the question and the instructions closely, as well as the actual text. So let's have a look at a typical type of question that you might face. Okay, so this in this exercise, you're being asked to decide whether the statements 1 to 8 are true or false, or the information wasn't given in the text that you were reading. And the text, the information that you will be asked to read was information about a London to Brighton organised bike ride. Okay, so it was a leaflet containing information about the bike ride, everything you needed to know if you wanted to go on the bike ride. So you'll be scanning the text to find the information that's listed 1 to 8, and then deciding whether the statements here are right or wrong, or you don't know, okay, because you weren't given the information. Okay, so this is a typical kind of question you might have. So that's the general training. Let's have a look at the academic. So probably no surprises. This is also 60 minutes. And you will also have 3 reading passages if you're doing the academic test. And the texts become progressively more difficult as you go through. So again, the texts are taken from a range of sources, and they may be written in a variety of styles as well. Important points to note about the academic test. Again, each question is equally weighted, but you will lose marks. You will be penalised for poor spelling and grammar, as we've come to expect. And again, you'll have a variety of question types. Okay. Variety of question types. It's important though, even though this is an academic test, okay, there's no suggestion that you have to be an expert in every kind of academic area or subject matter. Okay, so although the texts will have an academic flavour to them, they will still be accessible to a general audience. Okay, they're not highly specialised technical texts in that sense. And if there is some very specialist vocabulary that is included in the reading, then IELTS provide a glossary for you. They will tell you the meaning of those words. Okay, so yes, these are reading. These are going to be reading material from within an academic context, absolutely, but they're not specialist in the sense that you need to be an engineer to understand it, or a doctor, or any of those things. Okay, they'll still be accessible to a general audience, and as I've said, any difficult technical words that it's essential that you understand, you will be told the meaning of them. And just like for the general training, you can see on the screen the types of question types that you'll be asked to do. And again, always read the question. So this is a typical academic reading exercise. And here it's a matching. Okay, so you're matching the items here with the nationalities of the people who first invented or used them. And the text that came before this was about the development of rockets. And one thing I would like to point out to you here is you've got the number of questions. You've got 4 questions, but you have 5 nationalities here. So you have more choices than you have questions. So it's not as easy as thinking, well, if I can get 3 of them, I'll know the last one. Okay, it's never that straightforward, unfortunately. Okay. But yeah, you can see that you are just matching the nationality to the item. Who invented it? Who used it first? So moving on to the writing part of the test. The writing, again, is different if you are general training or you're academic. And we'll look at the general training one first. Again, it's 60 minutes. And there are 2 tasks. In the first one, you'll be presented with an everyday situation, and you'll be asked to write a letter, either asking for information or explaining something. And depending on the scenario that you're presented with, it could be a personal, semi-formal or formal letter in style. It depends on the situation. And the second task is you'll be asked to write an essay in response to a point of view, an argument, or a problem. And although it's an essay, you can introduce things from your own experience, but you're encouraged to do so. What's important to note then about the writing test? Well, first of all, answers must be written in full, okay, in full sentences. Notes or bullet points are not acceptable as answers. Okay, you have to write in full sentences. And where the written test differs from the others is the task 2 and task 1 are weighted differently. Okay, task 2 carries more marks than task 1. Okay, so it's really important that you consider that when you're managing your 60 minutes. Okay, so maybe the first 20 minutes you do task 1, and the remainder of the time you do task 2. Okay, because task 2 has got more marks riding on it. And both tasks are assessed on those bullet points, those 4 bullet points. First one, task achievement. Does what you've written, does it actually answer the question? Does it answer the question? Coherence and cohesion. Is it logical? Has it got a logical structure? Does one idea flow to the next? Is it laid out in paragraphs? Is it easy to follow? Have you used connectors to connect your ideas? Okay. Lexical resource, your range of vocabulary. Okay. And also the accuracy with which you use those words. Okay. Again, not just about using those big words, but are you using them appropriately? And as always, grammatical range and accuracy. Are you using lots of different types of clause in your writing? Are you mixing things between complex sentences and simple sentences? You know, where appropriate, are you able to introduce different tenses, including conditional tenses? No? But again, you know, using things in an appropriate way, okay? Always in an appropriate way. So this is a typical example of a task 1 for the general training test. And the advice at the top is that you should spend 20 minutes on this task. And then you've got like a scenario that's been given to you. Okay? And it's you're having a problem. You're sharing a room with another student, and there are a few problems with that arrangement. And you're finding it very difficult to work, you know, while sharing this room. And so it's asking you to write a letter to the accommodation officer and describing the situation, explaining the problems, why they're a problem, and what kind of accommodation you would prefer. So it's allowing you to decide what the problems are. Okay, it's not dictating too much about the detail. You will decide what the problems are. And it gives you the opening, dear sir or madam, it gives you the opening to the letter. Another important point here is it tells you to write at least 150 words. Okay. So you will be penalised if you write less than 150. But it's also important not to overwrite too many words. Okay, you've only got 20 minutes around to do this part of the test. Okay, so use it wisely. You know, don't write 300 words, you know, because you'll be eating into your time that you need for task 2. And also you won't get extra marks because you've written more. Okay, the issue is, can you write 150 words plus a little bit maybe, but can you write it accurately? Okay, all those things that we just talked about. Does it answer the question? Have you got a range of vocabulary, a range of grammar? And do you do things appropriately? Do you use the language appropriately? That's most important. Okay? This isn't a word count test, apart from the minimum. Yeah? As long as you've met the minimum and you've answered the question, it's complete, then you'll be good to go. Okay? So you have time to review it, make sure that it's as accurate as it can be. So there you go. There's a typical question. So have a think. How would you answer this if you were faced with this in an exam? What kinds of things might you say? So the academic then. Let's look at the academic writing test. Again, 60 minutes, that's the same. And again, there are 2 tasks. And again, you've got task 1 and you will have task 2. And task 1 is usually you're presented with some kind of visual diagram or graph or table or chart, and you'll be asked to explain it. You'll be asked to analyze it and summarize what that graph, chart, table is telling you. You may be asked to describe and explain the data. You might have to describe the stages of a process. If it's a diagram showing you, I don't know, for example, how to make cheese, or how something works, you know, for example, a torch, or describe an object or an event. You know, so you get the kind of an idea. You will have something in front of you where all the information is there and you just have to explain it. Okay, so you're not being asked to import information from anywhere else, from your own knowledge. Everything will be in front of you. Okay, it's just, do you understand what the chart, diagram, graph, whatever it is, do you understand what it's telling you? Okay, and can you explain it in English? And task 2, you'll be asked to write an essay in response to a point of view, argument, or a problem. So what's important here? You'll be penalised, as we said with the general training, you'll be penalised if your answers are too short. Okay, so you're asked to do 150 words in task 1 and 250 words in task 2. Okay? The same principle applies for task 2, 250 words. You know, don't try and write 400 or 500. You know, that's overall what you're aiming for, 250 words minimum. You might go over by 10 words, 15 maybe, but try and keep it within that word count. You know, it's been specifically timed. Okay? You've only got, so if you've timed it 20 and 40, you've only got 40 minutes for that second part. Okay? So write your 250 plus a little bit words and make sure it's accurate. Okay? In all aspects. The assessment of task 2 carries more weight than task 1. As you'd expect, it's longer. You're writing more, so you'd expect it to carry more marks. And again, these are the things that you will be assessed on, okay, for task 1 and 2. Have you achieved the task? Did you answer the question that was given to you? And is what you've said correct? Also, and you're being asked to describe a process or what a graph is telling you. Is what you've said about that right? Okay. Coherence and cohesion, again, does it make sense? Does it have a logical flow? Can I understand your arguments? Lexical resource, your range of words, again, are you using them in the right context? Are they appropriate words for what you're talking about? And your grammatical range and accuracy, again, mixing up your language. Okay, this isn't also about writing in very complex sentences, you know, one after the other. The beauty of the English language is that you mix up complex sentences with simple sentences. And actually a simple sentence can have a big impact, you know, so don't think that every single sentence you write has to have a conjunction and subjunctive or any of those. It doesn't, you know, it can be a simple sentence, okay, mixed up with some flowing sentences with different clauses in there. Make sure it's done correctly and appropriately, as always. So that's important points about the test. Let's have a look at an example. So this is something you might get in part 1 of your academic test. And you've got a chart here, and the question is telling you what it shows you. So the number of men and women in further education in Britain over 3 time periods, in over 3 decades, as we can see, and whether they were studying full-time or part-time. And the question you to summarise the information that's before you. Okay. What's it telling us? What are the main features? Okay, how are you going to explain this? What ends? Okay, what are the biggest contrasts? Okay, where are the, you know, the biggest differences? What does it tell you about full-time and part-time education? What does it tell you about men and women and their studying habits over those 30 years? So again, writing at least 150 words. And yes, as we said, you'd suggest you'd spend 20 minutes on this. Okay. And as I've said, as you can see, the information you have is all in front of you. Okay, it's not asking you for any other information that you may know about full and part-time education in Britain between the 70s and the 90s. Okay, you don't need to introduce any other knowledge. Okay, it's just based on what is it I've got in front of me. What do I understand from this? And explaining it. And there we go. So there's a quick overview of the different types of tests and examples of the kinds of things that you might face when you're doing the test. Okay, what are the ways you can do the IELTS test? How do you take the exam if you decide that that's what you want to do? You can do it on paper, and you can also do it on computer. On paper, as you would expect, requires you to be sat at a desk, and you will have a question booklet and you'll have an answer booklet, and you fill it in, the answer booklet, with a pencil or a pen. And you will do that test in an official IELTS exam centre. Okay. And then the spoken, the speaking part of the test, you will do face-to-face with an IELTS examiner. And the computer, you do it in front of a computer screen. The reading, the listening and the writing, you do in front of a computer screen. The questions, they're exactly the same, you know, whether you're doing it on paper or computer, there's no difference. And the only slight difference with the taking the test on the computer is in the listening test for the timing. As I said, you know, traditionally you get an extra 10 minutes at the end of the listening to transfer your answers onto your answer booklet. Okay, you don't get that extra 10 minutes if you take it on computer, because you do it straight onto the computer. You put your answers straight onto the computer, so you don't need the extra time. And again, if you do the computer test, you do that in an official centre, IELTS test centre. And again, you speaking test face-to-face with an IELTS examiner. The IELTS indicator. Okay, what is this then? So this is something that IELTS has developed during the pandemic. Okay, we're still following the COVID rules. Different countries have got different restrictions, and things are still changing all the time. So IELTS have introduced the IELTS indicator. Okay, and it's an online test that you can do to demonstrate your language skills safely. Okay, and what is it? Okay, it's online, and the test is done once a week. It's an official thing that is timetabled once a week. It covers all the 4 skills areas, so your listening, your reading, your writing, and your speaking. It gives an indicative score. Okay, it's not a replacement for the IELTS, and that's really important that people understand. It's an indicative score. It's not a replacement. So you may find, even if you do the IELTS indicator, that you may later be asked to actually sit the IELTS exam once any restrictions in the country you're in are lifted. And as I said, not a substitute for the in-house IELTS. So that is important for you to note. I should also say that the speaking part of the test for the indicator is done via video link. So you will still have an examiner, an IELTS examiner, but rather than sitting face to face with them, you'll do it via video call. The indicator is not accepted for migration purposes to Australia, Canada, or New Zealand. Okay, and some educational establishments are accepting it, and it's very, very important that before you book your IELTS indicator and before you do the test, that you do check that it will be accepted by your university or school or college. Okay, because even if they do accept it, be prepared that you may be asked to sit the in-person IELTS test at a later date. Okay. But it's there as a kind of easement at the moment, because lots of the world still have lots of restrictions on what they can and can't do. So this is a way to help you and help the process. So in summary then, what have we learned? We've learned what the IELTS is, I hope, how it can help you if you are moving to an English-speaking country. The skills, we also looked at some small examples of the kinds of things you might